much stuff floating around. I don't know. People trying to say they wasn't together.
Basically was trying to get into a threesome. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another exciting episode of Kay and Manny. I am the one they call Manny. She is a lady of all K's. And today's episode is sponsored by...
Today's episode is sponsored by Lady K Enterprises. We are a financial service firm. We can help you with everything to registering your business, to expanding your business by hiring a team, all the way to the financial service aspect of life insurance and all those other great retirement products. Thank you and welcome to the Kay and Manny show. And today, Manny, we are going to be speaking about...
Yes, we're going to speak about Meagan Good and DeVon Franklin. And you all know these two co-authored a relationship book, which I purchased in the past, are ending their marriage, or have ended their marriage, more like it. So basically, they took it to social media and they said the two announced, after much prayer and consideration, we have decided to go into our future separately, but forever connected, as their post began. They said, we celebrate almost a decade of marriage together and a love that is eternal. There is no one at fault. We believe that this is the next best chapter in the evolution of our love. Their statement continued. We are incredibly grateful for the life-changing years we've spent together as husband and wife. We are also extremely thankful to God for the testimony being created inside both and a blessing in our lives with each other. So, if you're not taking notes, if you haven't kept score, Meagan and DeVon are getting a divorce. And we are going to talk about it. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about all of this?
You don't realize you said something so profound in the beginning, Manny. You said, and I purchased their books, which I'm about to go in the expectation.
Just one of their books. I think they only did one.
Anyway, yeah. So. Yeah. But anyways, the expectations of other people, of how we perceive certain things and how we feel in our eyes, should go longer. Now, of course, we always want that happily ever after for a lot of people, right? Because happily ever after is an expectation. And I have to mention something that my pastor mentioned to me a while ago, and it makes a lot of sense to me, and I hope it can make sense to you on what I'm about to say, because again, remember, we're going on the expectation of happily ever after, and then we also want to take it to the biblical world where we're saying till death do us part, right? Death us part, that's that happily ever after, right?
Yep.
My pastor said to me one time, she said, "To death do you part" has also everything to do within the physical world. See, we think about it from the aspect that, the spiritual world, that we think about it is when we say death, it means the physical body have left the earth. Mm-hmm. No, not always necessarily is going to be that way. It's on the spiritual aspect that y'all two are no longer intertwined. So spiritually, you're dead because you don't have that connection no more. And sometimes that happens more than others. And then other times, sometimes you're in a relationship that you should not be in. I don't think that was their purpose, because they didn't make it to 9 years. We don't know everything that went on. There's a lot of speculations that people are perceiving from how things are going on. Yeah. But I have to let you know that happily ever after, that's made up. You know. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wait, one more before you start speaking. I'm gonna say this too. Happily ever after is made up, right? So I know people are gonna say, well, what about Kalima? What about our grandparents? I'm a park it at the grandparents and in that generation real quick. I'm going to give you a real quick aspect of why we can't put that into a spotlight. First of all, the dynamics of grandma and grandpa back then is so different now. It is different then because at that time, women did not have the opportunity to work like men. They didn't have what we have now, okay? So the women by default had to stay home with the children and the men went out and provided. However, we do not know what grandma and grandpa agreement was because a lot of the times it was don't bring that home. And we all know what that means. So it's like a lot of women may not want that in their future. And it's okay. So again, we cannot compare a past that in this future, it looks a lot different from grandma and grandpa. So please stop saying, oh, grandma and grandpa was married for 60 years. Grandma tolerated grandpa. Where's the love factor? No, real talk.
Tolerated.
Tolerated. In some circumstances, she's tolerating. She knew he was laying in love and he made his home wherever he left his hat.
Okay.
It's the truth. So I just have to say.
So you say, well, never mind.
Do not bring that happily ever after, because that's your expectations. Your expectations is the happily ever after. Some people have expiration dates, and then we don't know the dynamics of people relationship. So we don't know all that went in. But Manny, you wanted to say something?
Well, one, we don't know what the dynamics were back then, and plus times were vastly different back then as where our grandparents were dead. Now, I'm not going to say that the love wasn't there. I will say that there were circumstances that were much different than ours that either they tolerated and we didn't, or we tolerated and they didn't. Let me make that very clear, because we're not, at least I'm not going to just sit here and say, well, people who were born in the 1900s or 1920s didn't love each other. That's bullcrap. They did love each other. Now, it may be their own sardonic way that they loved each other, because I'll be honest with you, my grandparents, they loved each other immensely. Now, granted, every so often I would hear them cuss each other out, but they loved each other. Right. But then in a sense, I saw with my own eyes what they did for each other. Now, I'm more about the action versus the words, but another show. I do want to touch on something where you said, you know, most of these celebrity relationships are fairy tales. I don't want to say they're fairy tales. It may seem that way because of social media. Now, there are some that has that happy ending. Now, I'll be honest with you. Most stories that has those happily ever after endings, they just stop the story at that point. We don't know what happens after the happily ever after. You know what I mean? Because think about it this way. I'll use a simple child story. Cinderella. Okay. Homeboy found the shoe, went around town saying, is this your shoe? I know that's not your shoe because look at your feet. Your feet is wide, your feet is dirty, and your toes look like they're throwing up gang signs, so I know you ain't fit this. So they found Cinderella's, they found the slipper, and next thing you know, they live happily ever after. Now, here's the thing. After that story stops, what happens between the couple? Does Cinderella have kids? Does Prince Charming get laid off? I mean, do they have something wrong with the finances? I mean, are they sharing a bank account? Stuff like that. That's why I say not all marriages and not all fairy tale endings have a fairy tale ending. Now, I will also say that not all marriages have their own challenges. Now, who's to say that DeVon and Meagan didn't have their own challenges, even though they're not going to air it out publicly, and they shouldn't? But then again, are we setting an expectation with not only with people who we view as the power couple? Because let's look at it this way. For a long time, and I'll admit this, for a long time, I thought Will and Jada was the power couple until we saw not too long ago that Jada had an entanglement, as she calls it, and then other stuff started airing out because of Jada, and I'm just looking at her like, you was one toxic individual. Like, ugh.
But can I chime in?
Where's my Lysol?
Can I chime in? Hold on. I'm gonna talk about the expectations because that was good right there. So you mentioned Will and Jada, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, too, they're married, right? So they happily ever after is going to look different from everybody else's, right? There was a few times, and I'm happy they talk about this because this is real, because we need to know this part. Because like you said, Cinderella, her and the prince, they got married. What happened afterwards? Because I know as a little girl, I also watched, I'm like, you know, I was excited about that. Where's my prince? You know, and I had that dream until reality came in and woke me up.
Oh, did it wake you up?
Woke me up, honey. So let me go back, right? So there was more than a few times where they had discussions about they almost gave up. They almost ended their marriage. But then they found ways to keep their marriage. Now, guess what? That's between them, because the expectations of the world is saying something different, but they saying this worked for us. And for me personally, for you and your spouse to be able to come to the table and speak this in front of the world and then handle yourself in a great manner and say, hey, this is what we overcame and we're laughing about it and we're still overcoming some challenges, but we're still sticking together. That's upon them if that's what they want. They chose that, okay? Now, you have to ask yourself, what does happily ever after look like for you? Don't mind them, because like you said, your view was like, oh my God, look at them. But that also should also tell you, never idolize somebody's relationship, because you don't know what their dynamics are. You don't know what they have arranged, and that's between them. That's why they always say, stay out of married folks' business. You be like, oh, I saw Billy down there with Sue. You don't know what the dynamics is in their relationship. As I said, mind your business, because guess
mind
what?
Your damn business.
As long as Bill is coming home, Sue is irrelevant. You feel me? But I'm gonna leave that right there again. So, what does your happily ever after look like? So talking about your everlasting, right? Before you can even get there, when you first get with the person, so you have to ask that honest questions. What do we want for ourselves? What are our expectations? Because you have to have expectations in your relationship, because if not, it will stay stagnant. So I'm a firm believer that you have to constantly put in the work in order to have a successful relationship. Now, success is for you, and for everybody else, it looks differently. And I'm going to say that all throughout the show, because people are going to say they're whatever they want to say. It does not matter. If that person excites you and you excite that person and y'all happy and y'all not hurting nobody, then do you, boo. Again, who cares what the dynamics are that you guys set up to make it work versus what other people think? That ain't nobody else's business. People gonna, let me say something. My grandmother taught me this too. Regardless of what you do, people are going to talk. So people are going to talk. Look, they're talking now. We put Meagan and DeVon on this pedestal, and now look, 9 years later, they're not it. And it's okay. And so what, Manny, that they made a book. That book could have helped somebody. So just because they're not together no more, it does not mean that they message
isn't clear, right? And I want to make that clear. And sorry for cutting you off, but I want to make that clear. I read that book just for clarity on how their relationship kind of got to where it was at the time they read the book. Not so much as what it's in now, because let's be honest with ourselves. At the time of the book, granted, there's some things that I could take home, and there's some things that I'd be like, yeah, I get it, but that's not realistic. You know, things like that. But
right, that was for you, but in your mindset. And then I got to go back a little bit upon something you said. You said something about how your mom is an action woman. She loved to see the action. And I think we had this conversation before. There's nothing wrong with that. But you might meet a woman, yes, she loves your action, but does she want you to speak to her? And that's because that's her love language. So the love language and the marriage has a imperative act too, because if you're constantly speaking to me the way you want to, and I'm saying, hey, that's not how you get to me, you're going to turn me off, because what you're trying to do is bring in, hey, this is what I saw. Just like you said, you read something in Meagan's book that you said some stuff you can take with, some stuff that you can't, and that's good. But when you are in a relationship with that person, they're saying, hey, this is how you speak to me, this is what I want, and you continue to choose to do whatever you want, you're going to, this by default, you're going to turn that person off. So what if that was added something into the marriage? Because we always say, well, how come they're not together no more? And we're not just talking about Meagan and Franklin, but this could happen in anyone's relationship, because we already know in the beginning when it first starts out, we're doing all the things that we want to do for you. We're saying all the right stuff, right? And then that's the representation of that person. But then the true you come out. But it's okay, because by the time you say I do to someone, you should know who that true person is, and you should be asking yourself, can I deal with that? Now you might say, hey, I can deal with that, but then when the test comes in, because your relationship will be tested, then you're like, oh, I don't know about this part. But then let's go back to Will and Jada. They had those moments too where they said, I don't, and I'm comparing and contrasting because it makes sense. They said, I don't know about that part, but they found a way to get over it. And it was a little bit of a struggle. And this is why we need more people to come out and be expressive, because we're still thinking in that heavily ever after mode. But we want to see the real truth. We want to see some real dog that, hey, I can be open and vulnerable about a situation. And I know I'm going to give you the opportunity right now, Manny, for you to share what DeVon said on his IG message. And I know you and I had a battle about that, but, I don't care. So, Manny, share what DeVon put out on social media, and that people are tackling him about his message. Because I got something to say.
Okay. And this is something where I have an issue with. And the reason why I have this issue, and let me preface this because you're going to try to kill me with this, and I'm not going to allow it. I don't have a problem expressing your feelings, but you have to be careful where you express your feelings on, especially if you're going to express them on social media, because unfortunately, let's be real, social media and the internet are ruthless. They're not forgiving. They're not very passive, and they can be, passive aggressive, and they can be counterintuitive of what people think or how people act. With that being said, let me say what he said, and let me say why I don't think he should have done this. So, he said a couple things. One, he said in his IG, I took this picture a few months ago. I'm not much of a crier, so in a moment of deep pain and peace, I took this picture. It captures best how I feel. So in other words, he was very emotional on his Instagram post. Then he said, where is it? I share this with you because I'm the most honest way to start with my new year. And then he said, happy true year. So here's my thing. And this is why I'm saying, keep your feelings off social media or the internet. When you put your feelings out there, and I had to learn this for myself, you open yourself to certain criticism that may not be warranted, and you open yourself to criticism that can be extremely harsh or can be untrue. Now, I saw one person comment talking about DeVon, leave the acting to Meagan, please. So it's just more of, I don't have a problem putting your feeling and, expressing how you feel about a moment or about an event. It's just you have to be mindful of where you share it. That's basically what I'm saying. Because a lot of times, a lot of these people do a lot of this stuff for clout. Hence me and Rio's episode. Go check it out. But I always tell people, be mindful of what you post on Instagram, on Facebook, Twitter, or what have you. Because a lot of times people either accept it because you're being human. And then there are some people who are just going to reject it because, dude, you're living in this fantasy world, and all of a sudden you get slapped with reality, and then now you can't handle it. I hear that a lot. But that's my saying. Now you can retort.
Okay. Holy Spirit, activate. Oh, Holy Spirit, activate. Holy Spirit, activate. Activate. Hold on.
Oh shit!
Because I gotta make sure I put this into perspective because I need people to hear what Kay got to say. So I had to activate the Holy Spirit so I get this message out correctly. Let me say something. Everything that DeVon did, I respected 110%. The man was transparent about his feelings. He didn't say nothing more. He didn't bash Meagan. He kept it 100, and it was simple. All he said is that I'm hurt. I love that because I need my Black men to speak. Tell me how you feel. I like that. I like when a man is open up and can be vulnerable and tell me how he's feeling. I respect you 102%. I don't look at you differently. And I want that because there's too many of our Black men being silent because they're afraid of what social media or what people are going to say. I don't give a, and who cares? Continue to express yourself because we need that. It is let us know as women, you're a human being. It's not to say that we didn't know that you was a human being. We know that. But when you share that with us, it's like, yes, thank you. Thank you for a little bit of being vulnerable. Thank you for a little bit of being transparent. Thank you a little bit for being your feelings because you're allowed to. Because with a lot of men, how they deal with that, they can be hurting and they'll just go on and move on to the next woman. But I respect the man that said, you know what? I'm a hot mess. And I can't even give you something that I don't have at this moment because I need time for myself. I respect that so much. You just don't know. Sometimes you might need that. And then, right? Because now that you're not that with that person anymore, eventually you're going to get with someone else. And this is how I feel. Mm-hmm. Everyone should be treated differently. The next person should not have to pay for what you experienced in that last relationship. If you want to keep saying, well, I'm hurt, then your ass don't need to talk to nobody. Because don't come to me with that I'm hurt because I'm healed. I did some work. And that message right there shows that he's in his healing phase. And I appreciate that. So as far as you saying doing it for clout, I don't think DeVon was doing it for clout. I just
no, not at all.
Expressing himself. No, I'm just saying in that particular situation, I just think he was just being open and transparent, and I appreciate it. Again, that's just me. That's just the type of men that I respect. That I like it. That you're not so closed off. And then at the same time, too, ladies, I have to say this because this is very important. I know there's a lot of ladies that say I do like that too. I like it when a man can be open, he can be transparent, he can be honest. So I'm going to say to you, when he is sharing his feelings with you, do not ever throw that back in his face, because when we do stuff like that, he will shut down and he will not open back to us. So we like that. And when they're speaking, we have to learn how to. That's very important in a relationship too. Why am I saying this about Meagan and DeVon? Because again, we don't know what went on. We're just trying to get some idea. But these are the things that happens in relationship. You stop speaking to one another. You start over talking over one another. You're not listening. You're not doing the things you used to do. So what happened to those things? So this is why it's so imperative to constantly put goals on your relationship. You can say, about a year, I want us to achieve this, whatever that looks like. Okay, so if you say within a year, I'm gonna put an example behind it. So we were talking about Manny, you got to be careful what you're saying. And I'm saying as a woman, no, be open and be vulnerable with me. So if I'm saying that, listen, I know you're not used to saying I love you, or you're not used to expressing your feelings. Let's just say within a year, you get more open and more vulnerable with me. So we're going to work on doing different things together so you can feel more comfortable saying it to me, because I'm not forcing you. And that's one thing too. I'm not forcing you to say it. You want to say it, but because that was not displayed, you didn't really get to see that. And I got to see that. And that's the thing too, when we come from two different worlds, you're trying to put this couple together, and it's like, wow, I have a different background, I have a different expectation, and so does this person. But you want that goal because you really love each other. You really want to be comfortable telling your woman, I love you, and I want to express myself to you, because that's speaking your love language, because your love language is important to me. So we're going to do these practice. We have to put things into practice so we can get there. And that's how you scale it. If you really want to. Don't come in and say, hey, well, this is how I am. Okay, that's who you were, but do you want to continue to be that way? And you, like you said too, Manny, every relationship is different. You know, what worked for that couple don't work for that couple. What worked for Will and Jada did not work for Meagan and DeVon, and that's okay. But again, what does it look like for you? And how successful do you want your relationship to be? A lot of people do not know how to deal with conflict resolution. And that's one of the main reasons why a lot of relationships and divorces resolve. Because what do you see as why are you divorces? Irreconcilable differences. And guess what? I'm going to my last part because we're about to end. The thing is, when people in relationships, they always point the finger about what that person have done. But remember, when you are pointing the finger, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. So my question to you today is, ask yourself, what did you learn about yourself from your last relationship? So I'm asking you, the audience, if you feel comfortable to share, please share it. But Manny, I'm going to take it to you. What did you learn from your last relationship?
One thing I learned, I learned that you have to be consistent. You also have to learn that when you're saying something that you're going to commit, you have to commit 100%. But if you're saying, I'm not sure about this, give a legitimate reason why, or give a reason why, not let alone a legitimate reason. But you also have to understand that when you're committed into something, or you're committed to an act, or you're committed to something where it has to be kept up, you have to make sure that this is what you want. Because at the end of the day, and I'm not talking about the relationship itself, I'm talking about the act within the relationship. Like, for instance, if you're going to, here's a quick example. If you're going to open the door for your girl constantly, but the one time you don't, they're going to be like, what was that? So that's what I'm saying by you have to keep up an act or a habit within that relationship. Because sometimes if you're not going to do it, or you're not willing to do it every single time, don't do it.
And guess what? What you won't do, somebody else will. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And I'm going to end on that because I asked you, what did you learn? I'm going to share about what I learned. I learned to stay true to myself in a relationship. I learned that I am not going to stay somewhere because I don't want to hurt your feelings. If I'm telling you this is what I desire and this is what I want, and you are not available, or you're unable to give it to me at that time, I understand. I'm just not staying. And I did that before. And you know what happens when you do things like that in a relationship? You know what you're really saying? You're saying, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, but I'm going to suck it up and hurt my own feelings. Stop doing that. Right. Because at the end of the day, technically, when you're saying that you don't want to hurt that person's feelings, you actually are hurting them because you're staying someplace where you no longer want to be, or because how things are transpiring, you don't like the way things are going. You're trying to suck it up, but the other person's not putting in their effort. It gets tiresome, okay? So like I said, that what one person is not willing to do, somebody else will. And why should somebody have to suffer because you're not ready yet? No, that is truly selfish. If I see you're not ready, I'm going to release you because you're not ready.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
It's okay with me. And it's okay with you. I want you to be okay with me saying you're not ready. And it's okay. And I don't want to put no pressure on you. So I'm going to let you do you. And I'm going to do me. And you know what? Stop being mad at people when they break up with you and then shortly they get with someone else, because guess what? They're on a mission, and their mission is that I want to be loved correctly. I want to be loved the way I want to be loved, not the way that you want to love me. So the goal is to watch what that person wants to do. That's the goal. The goal is to watch them. And if they're not putting that emphasis on you, release them. Everybody has seasons that they have to prepare for. Maybe they wasn't fully, but they said they wanted, but they wasn't fully prepared. And it's okay. But because they got a taste of it, now they know what to do in the next relationship. And that's how a cycle is. Life goes on. So I love you, Meagan and DeVon. I wish you guys the best. It's okay because the 9 years you was together, you did get something. You know, you gave Manny, you even said they gave you insight on the book that they get. And that's what it's all about. When you do come together collectively, what are you leaving to other people? So what? It didn't happen the way that we want, again, because we're living by other people's expectations. We are not in the 50s and 60s no more. We're in a new head of time. And yes, we still want to hold the family dynamics, but we want to do it with a healthy aspect. You should do those 40s, 50s, 60 years with the person that you want to do it with, not the person that you feel like, oh, I have to, because we don't have to do nothing but be black and die. And with that being said, I appreciate you. Manny, is there anything else that you want to mention before we leave?
I like the Joe Clark reference. Let me say that. But I think we pretty much covered everything regarding of the subject and regarding of relationships and regarding of, you know, there is no such thing as a fairy tale marriage. There really isn't.
So yeah, I respect that, Manny. So yeah, so everyone, we thank you for being with us here today. Tell us in the comments what you think. Tell us in the comments, where are you at in your relationship status? You know, are you happy within your marriage? Because next week you have to tune in because that's our Valentine's Day special. We got a nice treat for you. And ladies, I got a message for you. So with that being said, continue to follow us here at the Lady K Chat Podcast, the Kay and Manny Show. We are here on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And you can also visit our website at www.ladykenterprisesinc.com. See you next week here at 11 a.m. Have a great day.
Lady K.